So continuing on with the series of Carrie Stevens streamers that I've been doing for the last few weeks, this week's fly is called the Casablanca. Don't know a whole lot of history on this fly. I ran across it and doing a little bit of research and looking for some various Carrie Stevens patterns that I liked and that I wanted to tie. And many of them that I tie and have done videos on have their purpose in terms of teaching techniques and materials that she uses, as well as being just good patterns to fish. And I don't know about the Casablanca, if it's a good pattern to fish, but I do know it's just a good looking fly. It's just a lot of fun, and sometimes just having the colors like the purple in the wing right here and the red, white, and blue head on it, it just kind of changes things up and makes it funner. So anyway, that's why I picked the Casablanca for this week's fly. And we'll discuss some of the materials and how this is put together and when we tie the fly. We'll get started. So we'll start the Casablanca by putting our hook on the vise. This is a Mustad R79. It's a 9x long hook. A lot of times people refer to these real long hooks as kind of a Carrie Stevens style hook. This is a size 4. I'm going to debarb the hook. This particular fly, the body is made of silver tinsel, so I do not have to worry about a floss body and a dark thread bleeding through. So I'm using a black flat wax nylon, and I will attach that a couple eye lengths behind the eye of the hook and then start to wrap this in as an underbody. Even though I'm not having a floss body, I'm just going to have a tinsel body. I do want to try and make this as smooth as possible so that it doesn't translate into the body. So I'm just going to take my time heading down the hook shank here, nice touching turns to tie in the tag. You want to stop maybe 2/3 the way down the hook shank, and then we'll tie in our tag. The tag on this is going to be some silver Mylar tinsel. I'm using a size Danville size 14 for this. There is no rib on this fly, so I'm just using this for the tinsel for the tag. I'm going to tie this with the gold side out, so we'll flip over to the silver side. If you have a metal tinsel, such as a Lagarton's or something like that, feel free to use that. Pull this back. I just need a little sticking out under the thread wraps to anchor that in. I'll put 4 or 5 wraps to secure that. Turn the hook over and start wrapping in my tag. I want 8 wraps down and 8 wraps back up. Mentioned there is no rib on this, so I'm just going to secure that and cut away the excess. I do have a tail on this fly. The tail is made up of some red hackle fibers, and I will be using a rooster saddle hackle for this. You could use something a little softer like a schlappen if you want. I like these because these have some really nice long fibers right down here at the base that will go up into the body a little bit more to kind of smooth things off a little bit for the underbody under that Mylar tinsel. I'll peel those off, getting the tips all evened up, and then I'll cut these butt ends here that are kind of curly off at an angle so that it will taper down a little bit better. I want to tie these in so that the tail is about half a shank length. I'll wrap these in right on top and then start working my way forward. Now you'll notice that I did not wrap back on the tail right here. I don't want to bulk that up. What will happen when I bring the tinsel body down is I will actually wrap to cover up all these thread wraps, but that will prevent this from getting too round and bulky. I'm going to flatten my thread out here at this point as I move forward, just to try and get as nice, smooth a body as I can. And rather than try and talk through that whole thing, I will just play some music instead. With my thread up into the head space here, I'm going to take a number 12 Danville silver gold Mylar tinsel, and I'm going to strip out about a good 16 to 18 inches here. I have to go down the hook shank and back, and I certainly don't want to get to the other end and not have what I need. Now, the interesting thing is most of your streamer patterns will have a body, especially if it's a tinsel body like this, that's the same color as the tag. But for whatever reason, the Casablanca actually has a gold tinsel body. So we're switching from silver to gold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim the end here so that I have a nice point like this. And then I'm going to attach the gold kind of on my side or towards the top, and I'm going to wrap in just a couple wraps, 3-4 wraps going forward to bind in that little tip that I had, that little point. Now I can, oops, I actually need this silver side up because it's a gold body. Glad I caught that. So let me redo that. I will trim it like this so I have just a tapered little tip on the silver side, as you can see, like that. And I will put that on the hook shank. And secure that down to the hook shank like that. Now my gold side will flip over. You can, if you want to, put some head cement along the body here, because this Mylar tinsel, one drawback to it is if you're wrapping this in and you lose control of it, it has lots of memory. It will unravel on you real quick. As well as if you're fishing it, sometimes that will happen. So some people will actually put a little bit of head cement along the body to secure that a little bit more. When I flip this over, it's going to go to the gold side. I'm going to take my thumbnail and just push down on that crease right there just to minimize it, kind of flatten that out a little bit. Don't pull too hard here as you're doing this, because you can pull that tag out that you secured. And then just start wrapping down the hook shank in touching turns. You're better off having a little bit of a gap than overlapping. The gaps will get covered up, and overlap will just translate through the top layer of tinsel. And again, rather than me sit here and try and think of something to say while I'm doing this, witty and educational, how about just a little bit of music? Oops, almost lost it there. You see where my thread, I lost tension on the thread and the Mylar actually started to back out there. That is what you have to be careful in fly tying. Thread control and control of your materials at all time is one of the most important things that you can master in fly tying. I think I'll actually throw in an extra wrap right here. There we go. And then I can get, it kind of is getting up into my headspace, but that's all right because I can smooth that out when I go to put on the wing. So I have a nice smooth body here. Minimize some of those gaps. I think where I have a bump right at the end of the tail material, I ended up with just a little bit of space there. But for the most part, nice and smooth. Hopefully you noticed when I came down to the end here, I took care to make certain that one wrap, that last wrap, came right around, covered up any thread on both sides right here, and then started back up. Notice how this is nice and smooth right in this area here. I didn't end up with too much thread here to kind of bulk that up. So that is the body for the Casablanca. We will change over to our black 6.0 Danville for finishing out the fly. The only reason I was using the flat wax nylon was just to go from one end of the hook shank to the other much quicker. You could use like a 210 denier Flymasters Plus or Wapsi or something like that, even a monocord if you wanted to. Then I will tidy all of this up with my 6/0, and we'll be ready to, that'll get covered up. We'll be ready to tie in our belly. Casablanca has a bucktail belly to it. And this is just a white bucktail. Like a lot of these types of flies that use bucktail in the belly, what you're going to do is cut out a section. You're going to clean it up, put it in the hair stacker, then remove any fibers that tend to kind of go out wild on their own. You don't have to have the tips nice and smooth and even. If they're a little bit ragged or uneven, that's fine. But you do want to keep this fairly sparse. This is just to represent a belly. So I like to put these in with the tips extending just a little bit past the bend. And I will attach that on the underside, the pinching loop. And I'll get 5 or 6 turns of thread in there to secure it. You probably noticed that when I pulled that up, not when I pulled up, but when I subsequently wrapped the extra wraps to secure it, it grabbed that bucktail and pulled it around to my side. That can happen because the materials are on the underside, and as the tension of the thread comes across, it wants to pull them all in that direction. So get in 5 or 6 wraps to secure those, and then make certain that they are indeed right on the very bottom of the hook shank. Then you'll go ahead and remove the excess bucktail. Take a moment to lash those butt ends down, clean this up a little bit. We want to make certain that we have a nice platform for the throat and then eventually our wing that we're going to tie in here. The throat on this is made with red hackle fibers, and I'm just using some red schlappen on this. You're going to go ahead and get some fibers from both sides of a nice long feather. The closer the fibers are down to the end, the butt end of the feather, the longer they're going to be and the easier to handle. You're going to peel those off both sides, get them together so that the tips are fairly even, and then they will go underneath the belly and under the fly like this. I like to have the fibers generally somewhere around halfway down the hook shank. Again, using a pinching loop, pull that up, and I'll get 5, 6 turns in here to secure that. You definitely want to put those extra turns in to secure it. If it's in the wrong place or didn't turn out right, you can unwrap it and try it again. But actually, these didn't turn out too bad. Again, they pulled towards me just a little bit. You can use your thumbnail to push those back just a little bit. Pull those back a little, but those are pretty much right on the bottom of the hook shank. So that actually turned out pretty good. Actually, they're coming my way a little bit, so I'm going to redo those. You got to be careful if you try to push those one way or another. You can also push the bucktail out of the way. So better off to just go ahead and undo them. I'll put them back up here. Make certain I have them pushed a little bit to the other side. Pull that up. Wrap that in. Yeah, that looks a lot better. There you go. So that's nice and secured on the underside. But as I was saying, you want to make certain you have a good 5 or 6 wraps in there to secure these, because when I grab the butt ends here to cut these off, it's very easy, if you only have a few wraps here, to pull these out of alignment. You can pull them so that instead of going nice and straight, now they're catty corner or something like that, or you can shorten them up. So make certain you have enough wraps to hold those in place while you get in there and cut the butt ends off. We'll go ahead and wrap this down and tidy it up, and then we're ready to tie in our wing. Now, there's one thing I forgot about the Casablanca, and that is that the head is comprised of 3 different colors of thread. It's a red, white, and blue head. So actually, you could have just used, say, a flat waxed white for the underbody here, and then change over to a white 6.0 or whatever for the head of that fly. So I'm going to go ahead at this point and change over to a 6/0 Danville white. And this will end up basically covering up that black as I put the wing in and build out the head and everything, and this will still work. But because if you had a black head and you just tried to put a white band in the middle to do the red, white, and blue, it just isn't going to look as well. I mean, it's just not going to come out well. It's going to be dark. You're going to still see the black. I mean, you can see some of the black right here coming through some of that white thread. So I'm going to take my time here and go ahead and just cover this up with some white thread. The back and the front will have the white and blue. So mostly I just want to make certain that the middle is nice and white in the resulting fly. Okay, so now we can go ahead and tie in our wing. The wing on this is comprised of 2 white saddle hackles flanked on the outside by 1 dark violet saddle hackle. The interesting thing is, it also has the cheek on that is a jungle cock. Some people might refer to the Violet Hackle as a shoulder because it doesn't run the length of the wing, but the recipes and information that I found, it's not referred to as a shoulder, it's referred to as part of the wing. So, but the Violet Hackle does not extend all the way down to the very tip. It just comes up short, maybe about 1/5, 1/6 the length of the wing. So I've got my left and right wings here. I'm going to match the tips up because that's what's most important, is matching the tips up. And when I made these ahead of time and processed the hackles, basically I made certain that all the tips and everything measured up and evened up before I actually went to cement these together. So I get those all even. I will separate these, the two wings, and sandwich them on the sides of the fly, simply because for me it helps the fly be more lateral as opposed to tying it right in on the top and then having the wing kind of kick out at an angle. So I'll get a half dozen wraps or so to make certain that that's secure, that it's straight on top, in line with the fly, and that looks pretty good. I think if that, it doesn't look to me like it's actually, it looks like it leans away from me a little bit. There we go, that's better. Okay, now I've got a little bit of extra here on the front of these stems, so I'm just going to reach in with my scissors here and cut those off, so I end up with a little bit smoother head to the fly. That didn't kick anything out, so we're good. So I'll bind those down and then start shaping the head. Yep. And see, now we're getting everything covered up nice and neat. Okay. Careful when you're making this, because remember we do have some wraps of red and blue still to go on this. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten my thread out and do my usual 10-turn whip finish. This will help just smooth out the base of the head, or I should say the top of the head, fill in the gaps on some of those thread wraps. Take your time, get this nice and smooth. And I'll cut away the excess white thread. So, wings looking good, head's looking good, it's all in shape, all in line. We will go ahead and get our red and blue thread put on the head of the fly. It is red, white, and blue, so I'm going to take the red and I'm going to attach it on the back side. Notice I'm not exactly right on the back. You want to divide the head into 3 equal sections of red, white, and blue. So I will use the flat part of my scissors here to cut that tag of red so I don't end up with a little pigtail sticking out. And then I'm going to be careful to cover up any white thread at the back of the head. I think that's got most of it. And then come forward just a few wraps so that I'm dividing that up into equal parts for red, white, and then blue. Now, take care when you're doing this, because you can very easily add too much thread here and you end up with what looks like a red bump as opposed to just a red band or a blue bump. Just take your time with it. Now we'll switch over and we'll start our blue. And the blue is going to go on as soon as I can rethread my bobbin here. Give me 1 second here. Gonna have to rethread this bobbin. This definitely happens from time to time while you're tying. Actually, I'm just going to go with a new bobbin here. Okay, so back in business. I'm going to take my blue thread and I'm going to attach it just here in front of the eye of the hook, just a few wraps right here. Remember here, we can use that to smooth things out a little bit and just work our way backwards to get our 1/3 band. I'll do the same thing. I'm going to use the flat part of my scissors right here to trim that blue so I don't end up with a little blue pigtail. And then I'll just keep wrapping backwards a little bit here till I get a nice blue thread band and break my thread. So let me unwrap a little bit of that. Apparently my blue thread is either getting old or not used enough. So I'll reattach the blue thread and this time cut off both of those. Oh, I'm just having some issues here today. There we go. Pop that off with a little razor blade. There we go, that one too. Now, try not to pull so hard. I'll go ahead and wrap some blue thread on here to make our blue band. Sometimes you have to go over this a little bit here and there to get a nice solid color in there, but by having the white underneath, generally that's not as big an issue. So once I get that in place, I will go ahead and put in a 5 or 6 turn whip finish to secure that blue thread. And the head of our Casablanca is done. One little stray hair right here. And another one right there. Okay. So that's the Casablanca. Some of those will get laid down as we glue this. Go ahead and put my first coat of glue or head cement on this. This is some Fly Tight. It is an alcohol-based thinner head cement that will soak right down into those thread wraps and really secure that head and secure all those thread wraps on there. So as soon as that Fly Tight is dried, in a moment we'll go ahead and put some hardest hull on here and start the process to actually finish the head on the Casablanca. So the fly tie's all cured on the head of the fly. That's our base coat of head cement. I'm now going to start putting a couple of layers of the hardest hull on here. As a matter of fact, this particular fly, because it has the tricolored head on here, I can't put a black lacquer on top of it. So I'll end up probably putting about 3 coats of the hardest hull on here to give this a nice gloss finish. You certainly don't have to do this if you want to just go out and fish the fly. I think it will fish just as well without having the nice glossy head, but it does look better, and there is something to be said in fly tying for actually creating flies that have a certain artistic appeal, certain good looks, as well as functionality. So I'll put my first coat of hardest hull on here. It looks like it's nice and smooth, and it looks like it's completed, but as that dries, it will actually shrink down to the thread wraps, and all those bumpy little thread wraps will all be showing up again. So that is the Casablanca. Again, very much like a lot of Carrie Stevens patterns, the wings constructed more or less the same, cheek, belly, the tag. This one's a little different because it has the gold body and a silver tag, as well as it has the red, white, and blue head on it. But like I said, in looking at some different Carrie Stevens patterns to do, I ran across this one and I thought this was just a handsome fly. And I thought, I have to do that one. So that's why it is included in this series on Carrie Stevens streamer flies, the Casablanca. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video and not only learned a new pattern, but maybe learned some new techniques and a few new skills. If you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button below. You can support Dressed Irons by hitting the subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you get notified when new videos are published. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.